What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the Deck 9 layoffs one more time, hopefully one more time, because these are far, far bigger or worse, whatever kind of word you want to use to describe it. They're far more than I thought they were, right? We did a video a few days ago, and just to recap it a little, right, my general thought was, well, it's probably going to be a lot of people that didn't have a lot of say. I mean, generally, companies, when they lay off thousands or even just hundreds of people, 50 people from a studio of like 150, right? When that happens, you're naturally going to get a lot of people that probably did not cause like the reason why you're laying them off, right? It's just kind of what happens. That's just the industry for you, I guess. But for this, that's kind of what I thought was going to happen. Is we know Deck 9 has already had layoffs, and that's also another thing that kind of makes this scary. This is I think this is the second one this year, but I think they laid off people a couple of years ago as well, so they're down big. But then I speculated, okay, well, these might not be the biggest people. Well, I couldn't be more wrong, because you literally have the director of the game, Jonathan Stauder, he's gone. You have Felice Kwan, she's gone, the narrative director. And, in her tweet, she talked about the entire writing team, what was left of it, because it sounds like maybe kind of getting towards the finish line of the game releasing, a lot of the writing team wasn't even there, or, was let go, right? So it was her and maybe like a handful of people that were left. That entire thing is gone. So the lead writer is gone, that entire department is gone, and then the head of the game is gone. You also have producers, and I think 2 producers in all, one being, I think, a lead producer, maybe both of them were, I kind of forget, but these are not nobodies. And I mean, like I've said before, like it's not to take away from anybody. I'm not saying actually people are necessarily more important. Like, people go in, they work hard, they do their job, and you can't really ask too much more than that. But you're getting a mix. Like right now, I believe Adnan, who we've had on the channel, great guy. He's done some insane investigative journalism, over the last couple days. So his count, I believe, is 12. I mean, I'll just show the picture here. You can see all the names. And I mean, again, in terms of like their importance to kind of their position, right? Kind of like top to bottom. These are big. And, you got 12 in all. This is not a big studio either. Like, this is not a 3, 4, 500 team studio. Like, you lose 12 people. If you have 100, I mean, Deck 9, correct me if I'm wrong, I think was floating around 100. Like, they used to have more, but I feel like it was only around 100, maybe 150. So like, you're losing like a 10th, a 5th. You're losing somewhere in that range. And these are just people he found. I'm sure there's more. So okay, that's the news. Now I want to talk about kind of the impact, right? Like, where does Life is Strange go? And as I said in the last video, and I think people understand it, and I appreciate that from you guys. Like, it's not to diminish the people that lost their jobs, and these are high level people, and also just people in general, that it's close to Christmas. This is a terrible time for them to do this, and whether it's Square Enix or Deck 9 or whatever. Bad time, right? But okay, I mean, we've talked about it, and you wish them the best. You hope that they land on their feet, and then you kind of have to say, okay, well, what happens now, right? Like, what does the future hold? So, everybody was very confident, seemingly, that they were still going to do more Life is Strange games, and the next game, Max Caulfield will return, right? After Double Exposure. I mean, the heads of Double Exposure are gone. This reminds me a lot of WB Montreal, that after Gotham Knights came out, which in hindsight was not a bad game. It was a solid game. It sold actually pretty darn well. Every head, I believe the head writer, the game director, it was the same thing, except I think there was a third lead that also left at the same time. So they kind of like just emptied that entire studio. That feels like what's happening here. It feels like whether it's Deck 9 themselves doing this or it's Square, and I think it has to be Deck 9 themselves doing it, right? Because while Square Enix does the contract stuff, Deck 9 is not owned by Square Enix. They allow them to do Life is Strange, and therefore you're kind of tied with them just for that. But they operate independently. So I feel like this is maybe the upper management of Deck 9 saying this did not work. And I mean, in some way, like, you get it. You get it to a degree. Now, it's still, like, there's still questions of, like, who do you blame? Who do you literally blame if you liked or disliked? Like, who made these major decisions in Double Exposure? And I think that's a lot of what the community is talking about right now. When a project fails, like, it makes sense for the heads of that project to go down with the ship. You know what I mean? It actually makes more sense for the heads. It's the inverse of what we were talking about earlier and what we were talking about 2 days ago, right? Where it's like, you ideally, like if they're doing layoffs and cuts and stuff, like the people responsible for these things probably should be the ones to be let go, or just a change of leadership, or they listen to feedback. So my general like moral thing, and I try to be like a human being sometimes, is I would prefer that you just really listen to feedback and you're able to change. Like I wouldn't want any of these leads to be fired. I don't. I honestly would want them to stay, and I want them to redeem themselves. I like underdog, redemption stories. So that's, in my perfect world, these people, they learn from what they did. You can't just keep going as if nothing happened, right? You got to learn from what happened, but you don't necessarily need to let them go. You can just fix it. But again, the issue is, well, when it comes to the writing, when it comes to what they did with Chloe, when it comes to, in my opinion, like Chapter 5, which is the weakest one, and what hurt the game, I would say, the most of the entire thing, like, who's responsible for that? And you don't really know, because it's probably a mix. It's a mix of the talent, and then it's a mix of Square Enix, being there and saying, okay, well, we want this, we don't want this, so on, so on. And it's like, well, are those people gone, or is it just kind of the scapegoats? Or are they not scapegoats, right? Again, it's a difficult, you can't talk about it too much, because at the end of the day, you really just don't know until even if they say something, I think they would just lie about it. So you probably just have to go on intuition. In terms of the future, my prediction right now is that they still do another Life is Strange game, and they probably still do Max, right? Like because people are speculating, like, was that a Square Enix decision in the first place to bring Max back? I don't actually think that's a bad decision at all, by the way. I've seen people kind of go at that. I think it was more maybe Deck 9 didn't want to do it and Square Enix forced it on them. Therefore, Square Enix was kind of wrong in that way. I mean, if that's the way of looking at it, that's cool. I can understand that. But I actually don't think bringing Max back is a bad thing. I think it is probably based off money, but at the same time, you look at what Life is Strange has done since 1, and the answer is not much in terms of revenue, and they need revenue in order to continue making these games. So I get that to a certain degree as well, right? I kind of could see both sides. I imagine that desire is still there. I imagine that Max still comes back, and I imagine they make another Life is Strange game from Deck 9, I'm saying, too. I just think this is probably a good signal, or a signal, maybe not good, but like a signal in general that there are changes. Like, this is going to be quite a bit different. They're going to bring in new people. Maybe people from Deck 9 will get moved up, but maybe just new blood in general will be added to the studio. But like I said, also, it's like, how much of these things are connected and separate, because Deck 9, like, they're the ones laying these people off. And it could be a mix of financial things. Maybe Square Enix is not happy. Like, you could look at, and one thing I've kind of thought of, well, if Square Enix says, well, look, we let you do double exposure, and yes, we meddled, but we let you do it, right? And the game did not succeed. Like, it didn't sell what we wanted it to sell. Okay. Well, what if they threaten them and say, well, we'll let you do the next game, but like you cannot do it the same way. Like, it didn't work. It did not. And, in some ways that's accurate, right? It's like, well, you can't just keep going down this road. If Double Exposure didn't sell well, you're going to make a sequel to Double Exposure. Sequels never sell, or at least most times do not sell as well as the original in gaming. That's normally not how it works. Okay, well, then you're going to have to like shake things up. So maybe it's a threat. Maybe Square Enix wanted them to do something like that. Maybe it was Deck 9 saying, hey, we just kind of need fresh blood, and we're going to make a new Life is Strange game, but we don't want these people to do it a second time. We want new people. I don't know. Specifically that Felice Kwan, she's been there since before the storm and the farewell episode. She wrote on the farewell episode. So these are not, or her specifically, she's been there a while. Jonathan Stauder, he's jumped around, obviously Telltale before and stuff, but it's a huge shakeup. But I imagine that Life is Strange is still going to happen for the same reason. Actually, I keep saying it, right? I always go back to, if I ever think, well, okay, well, maybe Deck 9's done, I just don't think that's possible based off what I said a few days ago. I think the upper management relies on Life is Strange. Like, that's the contract that they have to do more Life is Strange game is the only thing left that's keeping them around, because they're struggling to find, again, maybe it's not based off talent. I'm not blaming anything in particular, but it seems like they cannot get other contracts to work on other games, and they, for whatever reason, can't develop their own games, so they need Life is Strange to literally stay afloat. And so that's what I always just think about, where it's like, well, Do these firings mean they're not going to do it? I feel like if they're not going to do it, they're going to shut down. I feel like it's that dire because they've also had multiple layoffs. Like, this isn't the first time, right? I think they've cut as much fat as they possibly can, or they've identified as fat, right? They've cut as much as they can because it's like, well, we really are just a Life is Strange studio right now, and so we we got to be really careful with the decisions we make, the people we hire, how many people are here. We got to be careful, and this could be another sign of that, right? But I don't think it means that they're done. I think it could mean a shift, right? And that research opportunity for Life is Strange, that's still happening this week in London, right? That you can go and they're going to question people quite heavily. Not them, an independent agency is questioning people for like Life is Strange decisions in the future and all that stuff. And so Life is Strange is not over. It's not over. I think actually they're going to take it more seriously, to be honest with you. I feel like it might not be in a good way. It might not end in a positive, but I do think all of this stuff has probably made them almost double down and say, okay, we got to be really, really careful with Life is Strange. That might like make it too safe, and that could also make it bad, but I do think it's almost like a doubling down on it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.